Hello and welcome back to our channel, dear fans. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Everything I create is purely based on speculation and personal opinion. If you find this video interesting and helpful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. The latest spoilers for Beyond the Gates, airing on Friday, February 27th, focus on mounting tensions and hidden trouble. Chelsea finds herself caught in a fiery confrontation. Meanwhile, the clash between Kot, Leslie, and Eva escalates even further. And Vanessa once again steps in to support her best friend. Get ready for a Friday filled with anger, loyalty, and emotional fallout. The key points to remember are clear. The confrontation between Kot, Leslie, and Eva is spiraling further out of control. Chelsea is unintentionally pulled into a major argument between two cousins, raising the question of whether Kot will once again lose control of her emotions and lash out at someone in her own family. Vanessa steps forward to protect Nicole as tensions continue to rise. Fairmont Crest enters Friday with the suffocating heaviness of a day before a storm, but the real pressure is not in the sky. It lives in the eyes of every person desperately trying to keep their secrets from spilling out. The atmosphere inside the community, once built on glamour, discipline, and polite smiles, suddenly turns sharp and cold, as if one wrong word could make everything explode. And at the center of that storm stands Kot, both dragged into the chaos and fully prepared to tear everything apart. The anger inside her is no longer the brief frustration of a young woman wounded by old pain. It has been building for far too long, buried too deep, and now every time she sees Leslie and Eva standing in the same frame, it feels to her as though their very presence is a direct challenge. A cruel mockery of wounds she has never truly been allowed to heal from. What makes that rage so dangerous is not the shouting or the visible outbursts, but the fact that Kot can no longer distinguish between the truth of the present and the bitterness of memories distorted by time. To her, Leslie is not simply an unpleasant woman. Leslie is the embodiment of manipulation, of poisonous soft power, of the kind of person who can smile while pushing someone else to the edge. Eva, meanwhile, though younger and sometimes gentler on the surface, is in many ways even harder for Kot to tolerate, because she exists in that unsettling space between victim and accomplice. Between fragile innocence and the quiet ability to benefit from every piece of destruction her mother leaves behind. The confrontation between these three women does not erupt because of a single harsh comment or one accidental encounter. It is the result of countless avoided glances, unresolved insinuations, silences stretched beyond endurance, and above all, the long-festering sense of violation Kot has carried for much too long. She walks into this clash with the mindset of someone who no longer wants to remain calm. Leslie, however, is different. She arrives with a composure that is almost frightening, the kind of composure possessed by someone who feels stronger the more hated she becomes. There is no open rage in Leslie, only subtle pushes so precise that they force the other person to damage their own image. Every gesture from her seems designed to remind Kot that she understands her weaknesses better than Kot realizes. That is what makes the confrontation so dangerous, because Kot understands that she is not simply facing an unpleasant woman, but an opponent willing to turn her anger into evidence against her. Leslie does not need to raise her voice. She only has to remain unbothered, choose the right moment to bring up the exact thing Kot does not want to hear, stir up that old feeling of being replaced, dismissed, and invaded in spaces that once belonged to her family, and that is more than enough to send Kot over the edge. What makes the situation deteriorate even faster is Eva's presence. If Leslie is the spark, Eva is the reason Kot cannot step back. Eva stands there with an expression that is impossible to fully read, not openly defiant, yet not truly withdrawing either. There is something suspended in her posture, and that uncertainty is even more maddening than direct opposition. In that silence, Kot sees calculation. She does not believe Eva wants peace, and she certainly does not believe Eva is innocent enough to stand apart from Leslie. In Kot's eyes, Eva's refusal to clearly stand against her mother is already a choice. And once someone chooses to remain close to the source of all the turmoil, they cannot be completely blameless. Yet that very suspicion also makes Kat more fragile. Because on a deeper level, what fuels her anger is not only hatred, it is fear. She is afraid that Eva may be slipping into the empty spaces in her family that she once thought could never be touched. She fears that Eva's outward softness is making the people around her more vulnerable, more sympathetic, more willing to excuse things. She fears that one day she will become the only person left who still remembers every fracture, while everyone else gradually learns how to forgive, compromise, and forget the pain that once nearly suffocated her. That fear makes Kat react even more violently, because to her, losing the right to speak is the same as losing the truth itself. Then, inevitably, the thing no one wants to hear is finally said, and in the cruelest possible way. It is not a full secret laid bare, but a fragment of truth sharp enough to cut deeply into the pride of everyone involved. All it takes is one person bringing up the past with a loaded implication, one suggestion that perhaps Kat's fury is not rooted only in Leslie and Eva, but in something much closer to home. And immediately the boundary shatters. In that instant, Kat no longer feels as if she is arguing. She feels betrayed, as though her long-held rage is being peeled open, dissected, and turned into entertainment. That pushes her into her most dangerous state, wounded and humiliated at the same time. The people watching may think she is simply losing her temper, but inside her something far more violent is collapsing. She begins to question whether the suspicions she has carried were right all along, whether Leslie and Eva are holding some new truth over her, or worse, whether they are using a secret from within her own family to keep the upper hand. From that moment on, Kat's anger is no longer a temporary reaction. It hardens into something colder, a fierce determination born from being cornered and driven toward the possibility of doing something extreme just to reclaim a sense of control. But Fairmont Crest is not battling on only one front. While Kat is still reeling from her confrontation with Leslie and Eva, another conflict is quietly swelling around Chelsea. The cracks surrounding Chelsea are no longer minor disagreements that can be patched up with a few explanations. The success of a shared brand always hides a bitter truth. The closer people are in business, the more personal fractures can become deadly blows. For Chelsea, the pressure does not come only from preserving the image, protecting operations, or safeguarding what she and her family have built. What weighs on her even more is the sense that everything around her is becoming unstable at once, while no one is willing to face what is truly wrong. If the person who finally makes her explode is caught, then that explosion will be the result of tensions that have been buried for a long time. Because the two of them are trapped in the complicated space of being both family and business partners. The closer they are, the more deeply they can hurt each other, even without saying much. Chelsea may be exhausted from constantly trying to keep the balance, from cleaning up the consequences of emotions Kat cannot control in time, from pretending that work and family can be separated when in truth they have already twisted together into one impossible mess. And if it really is Kat at the center of this argument, then their fight will not just be about business strategy or one reckless decision. It will expose deeper feelings of being overlooked, used, and dragged into battles she did not start, yet always ends up paying for. But it is also possible that the confrontation centers on Eva, and if that is the case, everything becomes even more complicated. Chelsea is not the kind of person who explodes without reason. If she chooses to confront someone, it means a suspicion has already taken root in her deeply enough that she can no longer ignore it. Perhaps she is beginning to see something in Eva that others still refuse to acknowledge, the way she understands too quickly, stays silent at just the right moment, and slips into wounded relationships under the cover of seeming harmless. That is exactly the kind of person who can be dangerous, because they do not need to fight openly in order to shift the emotional balance of an entire family. If Chelsea senses that Eva is carrying a secret capable of shaking everything, then her anger is not merely personal. It is the response of someone realizing she has been standing far too close to an emotional bomb while everyone else refuses to admit it is there. What makes the conflict so frightening is not how loud it may become, but the chain reaction it could trigger. One mistimed sentence, one detail slipping out by accident, one suspicion spoken aloud, and relationships already straining to hold together could begin collapsing all at once. On Nicole and Ted's side, their worrying for Cot takes on another painful form. They love their daughter. That much is undeniable, but that love is being warped by hesitation and fear, especially fear of facing the truth directly. Nicole wants to protect Cot, yet she is trapped in the instinct of a mother who keeps hoping things will settle down if someone just learns to let go first. The problem is that Cot's pain is not something that can be solved with advice about restraint. Every time Nicole tries to persuade her daughter not to let anger control her, she unintentionally sends a message even more painful than silence itself. That Cot must learn to live with her wounds alone, while the people who caused the disruption continue to move freely in her life. Ted is not much better. He is worried, but his concern carries more avoidance than action. He understands that if things go any further, his family will be forced to choose sides decisively, and once that happens, there will be no easy way to preserve the appearance of order. That is why both Nicole and Ted remain stuck at the border between protecting their daughter and protecting the fragile peace they have grown used to relying on. And that hesitation only makes Cot feel as though she has been abandoned in a battle that directly concerns her dignity and sense of safety. That is what makes the growing distance between Cot and her parents so dangerous. For someone living with the constant feeling of being surrounded, her parents' hesitation no longer looks like caution. It feels like betrayal. She does not need soothing words. She needs the feeling of standing with people who are truly on her side. She does not need to hear that everything will pass. She needs to see someone brave enough to confront Leslie instead of simply hoping the storm will come on its own. Every time Nicole and Ted urge her to stay calm, Cot finds one more reason to believe that the people who should understand her best do not understand her at all. And when that disappointment is layered on top of the anger she already carries, it could push her into choices more reckless than anyone expects. Young people who no longer feel protected rarely seek peace. They seek action. And action taken in a wounded state almost always turns extreme. Vanessa steps in at the moment Nicole is most exhausted, but the presence of a best friend in such a moment is not necessarily soothing. Vanessa understands Nicole in a way very few people do, and because she understands her so well, she also knows exactly what to say to awaken the strength Nicole has spent too long suppressing. The problem is that when someone has been crushed between the roles of mother, wife, and guardian of appearances, all it takes is one person touching the pain they have buried. And they can shift from hesitation to fierce resolve in an instant. Vanessa may arrive with the intention of comforting her, but her encouragement could easily become the catalyst that drives Nicole toward her most emotional decision yet. If Vanessa casually mentions one suspicious detail about Leslie, one strange behavior from Eva, or worse, one sign that Ted himself is wavering, Nicole may no longer be able to calm herself with safe explanations. Once suspicion is planted in the heart, the most frightening part is not whether it is true or false. It is that it forces a person to re-examine the entire past through a different lens. Nicole may come to realize that all her gentleness has not preserved peace at all, but only created more room for others to intrude into her daughter's life. And once she truly sees that, she may no longer remain the woman who simply watches. But the price of awakening too late is often high, because when someone who has restrained themselves for too long finally chooses to fight back, they often go too far. While the center of Fairmont Crest trembles with these family clashes, another quieter movement at the edges carries the weight of the past. Smitty reconnects with an old friend, and at first glance it may seem like nothing more than a private moment, an ordinary reunion. But in a place like Fairmont Crest, no meeting is ever fully harmless when everything else is already unstable. Smitty's past has always contained blank spaces. People know the man he is now, the husband, the partner, the man trying to live by the principles he believes in. But they do not truly know who he was before entering Martin's life. That is why the reappearance of someone from his past is not simply a surprise. It is a reminder that every person carries buried chapters that never really disappear. And the cruel thing about those old chapters is that they usually return when the present is at its most fragile. If that old friend brings memories Smitty does not want to revisit, then this reunion will not stop at nostalgia. It could become a fresh wind in the marriage and life he has worked so hard to build. The possibility that Isaiah may also receive an unexpected invitation makes the picture even more unpredictable. If these two developments are connected, then they are no longer isolated threads. They become signs that an old web of connections is resurfacing, dragging hidden truths up with it. Isaiah has always carried deep fractures from his family and from his past in the DMV area. He is used to living in a state of half defense, half denial, always moving with the sense that one part of himself has never truly found peace. That is why an unexpected invitation is not merely intriguing. It is a threat to the fragile balance he is trying to maintain. If this meeting somehow ties back to Smitty, then it could reveal something even more delicate, that the two of them once shared a deeper connection than anyone knows, or worse, a secret both chose to bury because silence seemed safer. When old secrets return during a time of present chaos, people do not only fear being exposed. They fear being forced to confront the person they once were, and they fear that old choices will destroy everything they have struggled to build today. And if Martin is forced to watch Smitty pulled back toward a section of memory he never shared, then Martin himself will be shaken. Not merely because of jealousy or suspicion, but because of the painful realization that he may not truly know the person beside him as well as he thought. In marriage, what hurts the most is not always a massive secret. Sometimes it is the discovery that there are major pieces of your partner's life you were never invited into. If Martin learns that Smitty hid a part of his past connected to Isaiah or someone else from that old world, his trust will not shatter all at once. It will crack quietly, little by little, in the exact way long-lasting relationships are often destroyed. And once suspicion enters, even silence begins to look guilty. Hovering above all of this is still the shadow of Joey, a man who so often feels like the dark force behind every strange shift. If Joey has anything to do with the invitation Isaiah receives or the reunion Smitty experiences, then the situation becomes even more disturbing. Joey does not need to create chaos directly in order to control it. He only has to draw the right people together at the right moment, touch the right weakness, stir the right memory, and then others will destroy their own peace for him. In Isaiah, Joey may see a useful piece on the board, a young man marked by cracks, desperate to prove himself and easily provoked by the need to feel valuable. In Smitty, Joey may see a doorway through which he can reach into relationships that otherwise seem unrelated. The most terrifying thing about Joey is that he rarely appears as the obvious source of destruction. He appears as an opportunity, a suggestion, an offer, a subtle push, and then he lets everyone else turn their own lives into battlefields. By the end of the day, Fairmont Crest is no longer a place of separate, isolated conflicts. All these lines of tension begin reflecting one another because they are fueled by the same truth. Every single person is being pushed to the limit by something unresolved inside them. Kot is angry not only because of Leslie and Eva, but because she cannot bear the feeling of being replaced, isolated, and asked by her own family to remain silent in exchange for a false kind of peace. Chelsea explodes not merely because of an argument, but because she can see the rot spreading from private emotion into work, into trust, into the structure of the family itself. Nicole and Ted are not just worried about their daughter. They are terrified that if they truly rise up even once, they will be forced to face how they allowed quiet pain to fester for far too long. Vanessa appears as support, but that support could become the force that leaves Nicole with no way back. Smitty and Isaiah are confronted with the possibility that the past is not returning to heal, but to test who they really are once the protective layers of the present are stripped away. And Joey, whether visible or not, remains the perfect symbol of the darkness that fits Fairmont Crest so well, a darkness that does not destroy through sudden violence, but by slowly making each person doubt themselves, doubt their loved ones, and doubt everything they once believed was certain. That is what makes everything so dramatic in the most dangerous way possible. None of them are truly fighting only the people standing in front of them anymore. They are fighting the wounded, prideful, insecure, and deeply resentful versions of themselves. And when a community built on outward perfection starts to crack under the weight of those inner wars, the consequences will not stop at one argument or one emotional breakdown. It will create a chain reaction in which one niece's secret can lead to a confession, one confession can lead to a rupture, and one rupture can turn people who once loved each other into enemies. Fairmont Crest is not just heading for more drama. It is moving dangerously close to the point where every mask will begin to fall. And when that happens, the first truth spoken may not even be the cruelest one. Sometimes the cruelest truth is the moment each person realizes they have allowed anger, pride, and fear to guide them for so long that they no longer know how to turn back.